In recent years, relations between the United States and India have been portrayed as strong, friendly, and strategic. From defense deals to technology partnerships, Washington and New Delhi often present themselves as allies in the global arena. But beneath this surface of cooperation, tensions are brewing. The United States is angry with India. The question is, why? In this documentary, we will uncover the hidden truths, the geopolitical chessboard, and the real reasons why America's patience with India is running thin. To understand the present, we must revisit the past. During the Cold War, India leaned closer to the Soviet Union, while the United States supported Pakistan. Washington viewed India with suspicion, while New Delhi distrusted American interference in South Asia. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s changed everything. India opened its economy, sought foreign investments, and slowly improved relations with the West. By the 2000s, the United States began to see India as a counterweight to China. Defense deals, nuclear cooperation, and strategic dialogues began to flourish. Yet, despite these apparent friendships, the underlying tension never disappeared. America wanted India to be an obedient ally, but India chose to remain independent. The United States sees China as its biggest rival in the 21st century. Every global strategy, every trade policy, and every military alliance from Washington is designed to contain Beijing's rise. In this plan, India is expected to play the role of a loyal partner. With its massive population, growing economy, and shared border with China, India is strategically essential. But here lies the problem. India does not want to become a pawn in America's anti-China strategy. While the U.S. pushes for tighter alliances like the QUAD, Japan, Australia, India, and American New Delhi still maintains trade with Beijing. In fact, despite border clashes, China remains one of India's biggest trading partners. This balancing act frustrates Washington. The U.S. wants India firmly on its side, but India insists on walking a middle path, and that makes America angry. Another major reason behind U.S. frustration with India is Russia. For decades, India's defense systems have relied heavily on Moscow. Almost 60 to 70% of Indian military equipment is Russian-made. Fighter jets, submarines, missile systems. India's armed forces are deeply tied to Russia. When the Ukraine war began in 2022, America expected its allies to cut ties with Moscow. But India refused. Instead, New Delhi increased oil imports from Russia, buying crude at discounted prices. For the U.S., this was a betrayal. Washington wanted India to isolate Russia. Instead, India benefited economically while keeping a neutral stance. The anger grew louder when India went ahead with the purchase of Russia's S-400 missile defense system despite repeated U.S. warnings. This independence, this refusal to follow Washington's orders, is one of the deepest sources of American irritation with India. America is not just a political superpower, it is also an economic giant. For years, Washington has criticized New Delhi's trade policies. The U.S. accuses India of imposing high tariffs, protecting local industries, and refusing to open its markets fully to American companies. Tensions reached new heights when the Trump administration removed India from its Generalized System of Preferences program, an arrangement that gave Indian exporters special access to U.S. markets. At the same time, India is rising as a competitor in sectors like IT services, pharmaceuticals, and digital technology. American tech companies rely on Indian talent, but they also fear India's push for self-reliance, Atmanirbhar Bharat. To Washington, this looks like India trying to challenge U.S. dominance in technology and trade. Economic rivalry is quietly fueling the anger. The United States often projects itself as the global guardian of democracy and human rights. In recent years, American think tanks, media outlets, and even government officials have criticized India on issues of press freedom, minority rights, and religious tensions. India sees this as interference in its internal affairs. But from Washington's perspective, these criticisms are tools of pressure. Whenever India refuses to follow America's line on Russia, China, or trade, suddenly reports of human rights violations appear in Western headlines. This pattern has made India suspicious of American intentions and has created yet another crack in their relationship. Defense ties between India and the US have grown. Billions of dollars worth of weapons, drones, and fighter aircraft are being negotiated. But Washington's true intention is not just to sell weapons, it is to pull India completely into its orbit. The US wants interoperability, intelligence sharing, and military alignment. India, however, buys from multiple sources: Russia, France, Israel, and the US. This lack of dependency irritates Washington, because America doesn't just want India as a friend, it wants India as a follower. And India refuses to bow. Finally, the biggest hidden reason behind US anger is India's growing leadership in the global South. Nations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America look to India as an alternative to Western dominance. India positions itself as a voice for the developing world, pushing back against US-led institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Whether it's climate negotiations, trade reforms, or digital regulations, India is increasingly taking an independent stance, one that often clashes with American interests. For Washington, this is alarming, because a powerful, independent India means a world less controlled by the United States. So, why is the United States angry with India?